What does it take to be built to last as a person?
What it takes is an intense awareness of who you are and a clear understanding of why you do the things you do. And if you have those two, it doesn't matter what you're actually engaged in, whether it's fitness or business or your own life, you're going to be solid.
Welcome to the Tomorrow is Not Today podcast. You've already started to create the life you want just by being here. Designed for you as a business professional so you can be physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy, more productive, less stressed, and living a life you truly love. My name's Kingsley, and thank you for coming on another journey with one of our uniquely qualified professionals. Welcome to the Tomorrow is Not Today podcast. And in the studio, well, actually not in the studio, the other side of the world in Greece at the moment, David Amerland. Is that how you pronounce your name?
It is, yeah.
Yep, beautiful. David Amerland's joining us. Now, David, you have quite a varied background, study, knowledge, history, and everything. Like you cover almost everything, which is really cool. And I like that. So obviously there's going to be a lot to bring to the podcast. So before we get into it, the first thing I always like to do is ask a big question to get people involved in what's happening. So I want to ask you, and you've actually got my question sitting right beside you, which is really interesting. What does it take to be built to last as a person?
What it takes is an intense awareness of who you are and a clear understanding of why you do the things you do. And if you have those two, it doesn't matter what you're actually engaged in, whether it's fitness or business or your own life, you're going to be solid. You're going to make consistently good decisions, small and large, and a series of good decisions end up giving you a good life.
Oh, I'm going to love this. I can tell already. That is so cool. It's right along the basis of exactly how I think. So this is going to be very exciting. So I want to pull that down a little bit. And obviously, I will mention before we go into the next question, which is going to be really interesting. You've written, is it 12 books now?
It's actually 19, would you believe?
19.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's phenomenal. That's huge. And the last one, Built to Last, which just came out this year, didn't it?
Came out in March, that's right.
March, yeah. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a really fun deep dive into this. So now the first point you mentioned about what it takes to be built to last. Can you expand on that for me? So you've got to know fundamentally who you are, I believe is what you said.
Yes.
How do you know who you are? Because I think it's a lot of things. It's something that a lot of people want to know and a lot of people try to know, but really struggle with exactly who am I?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up as first point of order. I think the pandemic was a wake-up call for many people because suddenly the world that we knew kind of fractured. We lost contact with people around us. We lost the guardrails that told us how to behave. And it drove the point home for many people that our behavioral patterns, our sense of identity, our sense of who we are and what we're here to do, a lot of the times is externally received and we kind of go along with it because it is expected. Now, this is not fundamentally wrong. I mean, our first awareness of the world is in a place we didn't choose, living with people we didn't pick, having a name we didn't sort of decide to own, that was given to us. And then our understanding of how we behave in that context, what is acceptable, is basically created by watching what's going on around us, absorbing that information, internalizing it, and then expressing it externally. So all that is received information. Nothing comes from us initially. But at some point, we begin to wake up. The self-awareness bit comes in. When it comes to identity, there are two distinct parts. The part which I just described is the ascribed part. It's a part the world gives us. And it gives us a label, right? If it calls you a father, I mean, just that word has a whole lot of expectations. It's a lot of implied things you need to do, absolutely all those things which you need to go along with that. And a lot of the times we need that because, otherwise we'll have to recourse to a textbook for everything we need to do. So we receive those things, and they're encoded in our culture. They're encoded in pretty much everything we absorb. But there's a second part to our identity, which comes from the inside, and that's avowed. And that's the things which arise from our own emotions and how we process them, which allow us to understand how the world around us functions with us in it and how we fit in that world. And the avowed part is difficult because we need to do some work to actually dig it out, become aware of it, begin to sort of nurture it so it blooms, and embrace it. And a lot of the times we don't. Many times we end up fighting against ourselves. You know, we're one thing on the outside and a different thing on the inside. This internal struggle takes up energy. So if we take the view that we have perhaps 10 units of energy on any given day, if you're going to spend 3 of those units fighting yourself because you don't want to go to your job, you know, you don't want to be who you are, you feel you're constricted or restricted by the expectations of those around you, then you only have 7 units of energy to do everything else. And the world around us is full of demands, full of crisis points, full of unexpected events, and they take up enormous amounts of energy to get through. So knowing who we are creates clarity inside our head. Clarity in thinking leads to better values inside us because we understand them better. We understand why things are important to us, why we should prioritize them. And more importantly, it leads to a better sort of planning for the future, which creates very consistent goals. That's our why. It gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. And these things are important, not just for our life, but also for our health, both physical and mental. You know, the psychological studies that show something really small. If you don't know why you're doing an exercise, if it doesn't really have meaning for you, intentionally, emotionally, the efficacy of the exercise, even though the reps might be the same, whatever you're doing might be the same, can drop by as much as 15% per person. So you lose 15% of the value simply because you're doing it blindly, as opposed to doing it because you want to achieve something which is important to you. And when we think this is crazy, I mean, the exercise is exactly the same. You know, we measure the external metrics of it, and there's nothing different. But this is what happens internally. The way we perceive things with our brain changes the energy allocation that the brain is going to put in place for that particular perception based on the importance that we actually create for it, which then means it goes up in a list of priorities. So if we go back to our example of 10 units per day in terms of energy, if something is important to me, let's say I actually have this idea that I need a 6-pack and it's really important to me for whatever reasons. It doesn't matter how superficial it is. And I do my crunches and I do my sit-ups and I do everything I need to do. And because it's so important, because I'm visualizing all these things, my brain prioritizes the energetic allocation of load that's required for my body to actually change physically and acquire the 6-pack. And you may just think, well, I'm going to do some sit-ups. And we do exactly the same exercise. You will not get the same results. So it's fascinating.
And I've always noticed that fascination there. And it's the same with what we eat as well. Food has the same sort of effect, which is just mind-boggling to me that our thought process completely changes how much we get out of something. And one of the things like that you hit on there, which I want to go a little bit deeper in, even though what you've done is certainly not shallow. When it comes to identity, and when you think about, okay, I want to say get a 6-pack. That's one of the things I want to do. How much does that relationship there between who I think I am, who do I think the world thinks I am, and who do I want to become? How does that all mix in together?
That's a crazy thing, isn't it? It's really designed to trip us up. And we are intensely social beings. We're hardwired to be social because that's how we maximize our energy. Individually, each of us, doesn't matter how rich you are, how smart you are, how strong you are, you're nothing, just an individual. We only become something by engaging with our communities, our families, our friends, the world at large. At the same time, we are designed to fit in because of the social imperative in our brain. And that then gone wrong creates a performative element, perhaps, if we call it that, to us, where we are putting up a facade And then we are allocating a tremendous amount of energy to maintain that facade, and it's fake, and it's killing us. It's taking up so much energy to maintain because it is fake, but it's exhausting us. It's like, I don't know, let's say, think about something basic. Let's say, telling lies to people, small lies, not big ones, but telling a lot of small lies. Okay, then you have to remember all those small lies you told to everybody. Okay, it's exhausting us. I'm meeting you, you're going to say, "Good day, David, how you doing?" And I'm thinking, okay, what did I tell him last time? All right, my brain is already
Yeah,
fried,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whereas if I was just myself with you, all I have to respond to is your good morning and ask back, how's your day going on? And suddenly we have a different kind of interaction. Exactly the same context, exactly the same two people taking part in that. Now, in this simple example, there you go, there's your answer. If we don't understand who we are, if we constantly receive external signals, well, those signals change depending on the context, depending on the situation, then it becomes very exhausting for us to be us. Suppose, for instance, that I'm okay to constantly be what the world expects me to be. Okay, I'm at home, I'm this. But then I go to work and I'm that. And then I go to the pub and I'm this. And I go to somewhere else. And now I've got 4 identities to maintain. And I've got every time to have this mental switch to compartmentalize those things. And then I've got to ask, well, who am I really? And I don't want to ask that now because I'm exhausted and also I'm afraid. Maybe I'm none of those things. I don't like that answer. So I tend to shy away from the internal work that I need to do. But if I want to grow, if I want to actually have meaning and value in the world, beyond that superficial contextual interaction that I engage in, then I've got to actually say, okay, who am I really? What am I here to do? How do I achieve those things that have meaningful impact for me and for the world around me, which then makes me feel good, makes me feel valued.
So let me ask a question on that again, because obviously we all wear different hats.
Yes.
So at work, we're going to be one person. And then that could also be different depending on who we're talking to, who we're relating with, what we're doing exactly. At home, we're going to be something different. You might be a dad, you could be a mum, you could be a kid, it could be whatever it is. And then you go out and maybe you play basketball on the weeknights or something. So you're a team player with your different teams. And each one of those is going to be that little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little bit of a difference in how we relate to them. Is it a difference where it's a different aspect of us where we relate to people in a different way, or are we becoming a different person with each of these different hats that we wear in different scenarios?
Oh, okay. The answer to that is actually, and it's a brilliant question, right? The answer to that is it depends. It depends on who you think you are. Now, obviously, in every context, there are some parameters of accepted behavior. So if you're at home, for instance, you're not going to behave quite the same way that you do in the pub. Or if you're at home, you're not going to be as competitive at home as you are on the basketball court or the tennis court. However, there's also a consistency of approach that comes from knowing yourself, what you want, your values, what's important to you, and how you prioritize the things you do. And if that consistency of approach isn't there because you don't really understand yourself internally, then the context of the situation drives you. But because, and here's the rub, because that context is always going to be energetically intensive. The demands made on you at home don't get any easier than the demands made on you on the basketball court or at work or in the pub. In those 4 situations, there's a lot of things being thrown at you have to respond to. And on a good day, when you're full of energy, when no crisis happened, maybe you can pull it off. Maybe you can be 4 different people in a day and you can be fine. But on an average day, when something is going on at home and something is going on at work, you go down the pub and you're going to overreact and get into a fight. Because you don't now have control of who you are. Things drive you. And not only they drive you, but because the energy is so intensive on what you're doing, you don't have control of your emotions. So what would trigger you normally, and you say, okay, this is a stupid thing, I'm not going to be a child. You don't have that margin now to actually say that because you can't process it.
Yeah, because the energy is being used up in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're
Yeah.
stressed already.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because we are one person. We can try to be
Mm.
different people in different places, but whatever's happening, we are one person and it affects every other aspect of life. It's very true. So let's go back, change gears just a little bit at the moment, because you've done a lot to do with personal training, fitness, health, all that sort of thing. And also, you're a very successful businessman, author, and stuff. So I want to go down the track of how important is exercise, general health to being a successful business person?
Okay. Beautiful. I mean, the easy answer is it's absolutely 100% fundamentally important. But before we give that, we need
Thought
to
you might say
understand
that.
why. Yeah, yeah, that's the easy one, right? But let's understand why. And let's see what happens in business and take the business scenario. You're trying to do something which is complicated. You usually have a team, which you don't control completely because they're individuals. And you're working in a context, in a market, driven by forces over which you have zero control. And you still need to achieve the outcomes and the goals that you set out to achieve. And you have within that context a lot of responsibilities, a lot of crises, a lot of decisions to make. The whole thing is a nightmare. It takes a huge amount of energy to just keep your head above water, never mind being successful. And that energy wouldn't be there if your body is not okay and your brain is not okay. And just to flip that, right? Let's say you have right now a cold, and that cold is taking up half your energy to fight. Okay, a cold is not going to kill you, but it can be pretty bad. And I come to you with an idea. I say, hey, why don't we do this? Set this up, business, brilliant idea. You're going to tell me to go away. Simply because you cannot imagine from the way you're feeling being able to deal, first of all, with something new, secondly, analyze it, thirdly, evaluate it, and then visualize the struggle that you can do, which takes to make a takeoff. And you're going to think, this is too much, I can't do it. And that's just a simple cold. We can suffer from low-grade inflammation all our life, which leads to all sorts of issues. We have high blood pressure, bad internal health, bad cognitive health, the whole thing. It doesn't kill us, but it definitely diminishes us. It reduces our capacity to be the best human beings we can be.
And decision making, obviously relationships and things like that as well. Yeah, it's going to have a massive impact on that. But and then also decision making at work, because if you got all these decisions that you got to be making all day, which when you own a business, you are constantly making decisions in
Yes.
different ways. And then yeah, it's your relationships, whether it's at home, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's outside of that as well. And the whole thought pattern, I think the whole mindset seems to adjust. From the study that you've done and what you've learned and experienced, how big of an impact does that health factor have on our actual mindset and the way we view things throughout the day?
It has more of an impact than any of us actually realizes. And to contextualize this, how important the mindset is, how important our self-awareness is, I'm going to bring in a study made by Harvard in 2007, where they looked at 3 different groups of hotel maids. They're the people who clean the beds and they, sort of give room service or prepare a room for a guest, etc. So they had a group of 60, 3 groups of 20 from 3 different large hotel chains. And they took them aside, and to 2 of the groups, they gave really detailed presentations and explanations and told them, you guys are doing these things every day. At the same time, what you're doing is exercise. You're basically moving your body in this way, you're moving your body in that way, you're exercising these muscles, you're doing all these things. Now, the 3rd group, which is the control group, which does exactly the same work, I told them what we're looking at is just trying and get a better understanding of what it is you guys do every day. So they went through that, and then they took measurements of their heart rate and their blood pressure and their body fat and their sort of hip to waist ratio, their BMI, all those things. And then they left them alone for a period of 12 weeks. And at the end of the 12 weeks, they carried the same battery of tests. And this is what they found. The group of people, mostly women, who were given the detailed lecture that showed them that what they did was exercise, showed an improvement across all biomarkers across the board between 15 and 18%. And the group that had been told, we're just looking to see what you do, showed zero improvement. They were exactly the same where they started. And the only difference between that was the self-awareness, how they felt about what they did. This is the mindset. This is understanding what you do. So that simple thing, they did nothing else. And they all did the same things. They changed nothing. But that awareness changed everything for them. So this is the answer to your question of how important mindset is.
That's a great, and I remember reading that study, and I think it blew my mind when I read it as well, that what our mind actually does and how powerful it really is. It's quite mind-numbing, really. And then if you were to take that into a workplace or onto the sports field or any other area of life, really, and then you multiply that out over every day, every week, every month, just for a year. If you're talking a 15 to 18% difference in what happens just from the mindset,
Yeah,
that's the difference over a whole year.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, if you take into a business context, you're making fewer mistakes, you have fewer customer complaints, you have fewer internal costs in how you do your business. Suddenly your profitability has gone up, the happiness of your team has gone up, and your market share isn't great. You're not making more sales, but everything works more smoothly just on that. You take it into a sports field setting, and what do you have? A team that actually gels. They're making fewer mistakes. They're taking better advantages of the opportunities that the game set is actually presenting them with. And they're beginning to win consistently. And they're not fundamentally different in their makeup. They didn't get faster. They didn't get stronger. Their cardiovascular fitness didn't increase. Their VO2 max is the same. But what happened is that awareness of how they operate in that context and what importance that has for them. So yeah, mindset is critical. And if we get the opportunity, I'll share another study on that from Navy SEALs done by Stanford University, which is
Yeah,
also
no, please
eye-opening.
do. I love these studies. They're so, in some ways, often remarkably simple, but so impacting at the same time. So yeah, no, please go ahead. Let's hear it.
Those who are not aware, if you go for Navy SEALs, which is the elite combatants in the US, you are already a made product. Okay, you're a soldier from another sort of a part of the military forces. You're already fit, you're already disciplined, you already have the right mindset on how you want to be the best of the best. And because it's so expensive going through the selection process, the military were interested in seeing if they can basically find a way to weed people out using their CVs, because they're remarkably the same. And the ones who fail, often the ones who succeed, on paper, you can't see any difference. So they brought in MIT lab researchers from behavioral studies and psychology to actually weed them out as well, test them to see what the difference is. And this is what they found. And bear in mind, the attrition rate by week 2 on Navy SEALs is 75%. This is hell week. You go through a barrage of things which absolutely take you beyond your capacity, and that's the point. And you still have to push through. So 75% attrition rate. And the researchers came in and they gave everybody, comprehensive tests, physical and behavioral and psychological, and they gave them questionnaires and they tried to see what the difference is. And it came down to a very simple thing. This is the ones who failed, this is what they actually perceived about Hell Week. This is really hard. It is killing me and it's diminishing me. And the ones who passed through, the 25%, thought this is really hard, it's killing me, but it's making me stronger.
Wow.
That was just mindset. It's, the glass, it's a classic glass half empty, half full, right? In the glass, there's 50% of water. That does not change. But the way you perceive it changes your internal neurochemical and neurobiological makeup. And to quantify, let's say we're in the desert, right? And we're looking at the glass, 50% full. I'm thinking it's half full and you're thinking it's half empty. Now, this is what I'm experiencing internally. I'm thinking it's half full, I'm okay, I can still manage to get through, and I have 50% of water still in me. And you're thinking, I've only got half a glass, and your anxiety levels are going up, your cortisol levels are going up, your heartbeat is going up, your body's under stress, and we're already in a stressful environment, right? We're in the desert. And the worst thing that happens is your brain senses this. It senses that it's a threat. It shuts down crazily the higher analytical parts of the brain, which you need for critical thinking because they are energetically expensive, and it prepares you for action And the action you really need is that higher thinking, and it's not accessible to you anymore because essentially you stress
Right.
yourself out and you panicked.
Wow, that's like such a simple shift. Like all the other
Yeah,
thinking was the same, and it's just that last little thing is it's making me better or it's killing
yeah,
me.
yeah,
One of the two. And the whole body responds in a different way.
yeah. And that makes the difference at the end, whether you're going to
Wow.
drop out or push through and become a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. And was that pretty much the ones that actually did make it with it, almost 100% went with that thinking?
Yeah, all of them. Every 25%.
Really?
This is a 2022 study, so it's fairly recent.
Yep.
Yeah, every single one of the participants that made it through had this positive mindset where that it didn't matter what they faced, they were
Yep.
able to accept that it was going to be okay, it's going to make them feel better eventually, it was going to get them to where they want to, and they felt capable as a result of their thinking. They felt capable in that context of actually pulling through, even though from a purely physical and mental and psychological point of view, the resources they were pouring into it were exactly the same as everybody else. You know, they're putting in as much effort, they're putting in as much energy, but then when it comes to your absolute limit, then it's how do you hold on? How do you push through? And how do you
Yeah.
not quit, essentially? Well, the ones who quit felt that this was too much. And the ones who actually pulled through felt that if they could just get past this, they're going to get better. It's going to get them there. And that's how they pulled through.
Right. So, how is there something in the mind when people are going through this process that you can flick from this is killing me to this is making me bigger or better or stronger or whatever it
Mm.
is? Is there, what can we do as individuals to make that switch?
Yeah, there's two things. I mean, there's something in the mind, there's something in the body, and we'll address that both. But let's start with the mind first. The first thing is reframing. If we go back to the example of the glass in the desert, we were both looking at 50%. You are under stress because you think you haven't got enough water. I'm not as much under stress because I think, well, I still have a lot of water left. That reframing allows me to see opportunities of action which are not available to you because you simply haven't got the mental capacity to process them. Because in that particular moment in time, because you're under stress, your brain has narrowed down, you haven't got as much access to all the knowledge, information, experience that you already have in your head because it's shut down. So when you receive signals from the external world, you can't process them with all the full spectrum of knowledge and experience that you actually possess. And this works in business as well. If you're stressed out, here's the situation. You can't process it, even though you are on paper capable of doing that and getting through it and making the right decision. And because I'm thinking, the glass is okay, I make different decisions.
So that would mean that there's probably a whole bunch of opportunities. And
Yes,
obviously, usually opportunities are built, they come with overalls on rather than just something that's handed on a silver platter. But
absolutely.
in that thinking, then obviously we're going to be in a place where we're going to miss a whole bunch of opportunities, aren't we? There'll be things that are
Yes,
coming at us, and because of our thinking, we'll miss it. The
yes.
opportunities are there, but we just can't see them.
Yeah, we don't see the solutions. We don't see how to, the easiest way to say this is we don't see how to navigate that situation. The paths that are available to us then are reactive purely. We
Yeah.
react to circumstances as opposed to navigating it, which means you choose a direction, you choose an action, you begin to weigh it, and that changes everything. Even if that action is initially wrong, it takes you somewhere else, and then you can see those opportunities in which you've actually worked to create now, right?
Mm.
Which you just mentioned. So yes, so that's the difference. So this is the mental thing, the reframing. There's a physical thing. We know, and this is where self-awareness kicks in, knowing a little bit of who you are, how you operate. We
Mm.
know that if we get stressed, the body's sympathetic nervous system goes into fight or flight. All the resources then are diverted into a fight or flight response. So we're in reactive mode, stroke survival mode. And this is not what we need in a modern, complex world. Physically, we can dampen that down. The moment we feel ourselves getting stressed, if we just pause and take a really deep breath, relaxing our chest, relaxing our diaphragm, filling up our lungs with air, that activates the body's parasympathetic nervous system, whose one of the primary roles is to bring us back down to baseline levels so that our brain can engage, so that our heart rate can drop, so the cortisol levels in our bloodstream can reduce and become sort of unacceptable.
The whole interaction of the body and the mind, the brain, the mindset, everything like that is so, it's so intense. And as you're bringing out so well some of like how it actually does affect us and the difference it makes in us personally, in our mindset, in business, and our relationships and everything else as well. It's absolutely huge. We actually went a lot more down the mindset path than I was actually expecting to go, but this has been fantastic because I think to me, this podcast has been very simple in some ways, but very profound at the same time, pointing out some things that probably I think a lot of people have questions for, but not really sure where to actually go with them. How did you get involved in this whole side of things in the first place?
Well, I'm a chemical engineer by training.
A
And
chemical engineer?
yeah, and yeah,
Yep.
my master is in quantum dynamics. I started writing about search primarily when I started writing because of the mathematics and I understood where things were going. And then I've written books on search and business and marketing and branding and decision making and intentionality and fitness. And it's all different, right? But it isn't for me
Yeah.
because I don't focus on the details, but because the details will change. I focus on the things which are fundamental. And the fundamental thing in every one of those quarters of domains of human activity is us. It's what drives us. I'm fascinated by the reasons of why do we do some things? Why don't we do the things which we should be doing? Why do we perceive things when there's nothing there to perceive? So human behavior is fundamental. It's driven, for all its complexity, it's driven ultimately by very fundamental forces which are relatively easy to understand. And then the complexity that arises from them is how we manage those forces in a modern environment so that we can achieve the things we want to achieve, so we can become better human beings, better people, better business people, and at the same time feel happy in who we are. So that's a drive for me.
I love it. And how you've put everything together as well. And as much as they are very different things, they're all interlocked definitely with each other and how everything works as well at the same time, which is, I think it's just fascinating. With the more you actually learn about stuff, not only the more you realize you don't know, but you realize how closely connected everything is, which is just amazing. And obviously for you, a lot of your study has also been around how the body and the brain and the mind and everything all works together and fits together. We're coming close to time, believe it or not. I can't believe it's here already. But give me just a brief overview of how those things all interlock for everybody on the planet.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start up with the absolute very basic things, the things that you want for yourself and those around you. And that's going to represent some kind of vision, some kind of plan, some kind of values. It will be reflective of those values, which will then allow you, once you engage with it internally and accept it, will allow you to navigate reality, which means you now begin to prioritize what it is that you need to do because you have specific goals in mind. And your goals may change and your own sense of who you are will evolve. But what will stay the same always is the schema of that. You have an awareness of who you are and an acknowledgement of where you're going and an understanding of why it's important for you to get there. And if you start with just those three things in any context, relationships, business, yourself, life, fitness, then internally now you have a selection process. And that selection process means that you have priorities. And those priorities means that you're choosing things which are meaningful for you at an emotional level. They actually mean something as opposed to just doing them by rota. And because they mean something, they have value for you and they also ascribe value to who you are. And suddenly you become a whole person who does things because they're important, who understands what is right, what is wrong because of those actions, who can prioritize things and understands how to prioritize because of that importance. There's a saying that says, if you don't know where you're going, all roads will take you there. That's so true.
Yeah. And that, what you just said there actually takes us right back to what you said right at the very beginning, is knowing who you really are. And I think you summarized the whole lot really well with all of that. Right from the beginning, we've done a great big loop, which is a very important loop. And obviously, you could go on for hours and hours talking about all this stuff. So how important it is, how really fundamental and exciting it is, and how it actually dictates our lives to a large degree as well, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just as we close off, David, tell people, where can we find out more about you? Where can we get a hold of your books, all that sort of thing?
Okay, you can find me at davidamerland.com. I put a lot of stuff there. You can also find my socials there, but if you Google me, you'll find my socials. I keep up with a lot of studies. I get really excited by what I find, any insight that I get from those studies, which is practical. I share it out freely and widely. It's important for us to know. You will find Built to Last on Amazon or any bookshop. You can order it from your bookshop and I'll bring it in within a few days, but you definitely can get it online in any of the online retailers.
Fantastic. And now, when I end the podcast, I always ask two questions, because I talk, tomorrow's not today, we talk about the ultimate tomorrow a lot. So if I was to ask you, David, what is the ultimate tomorrow?
Ultimate tomorrow is the one you are fundamentally building right now for yourself, with a full understanding of what it's going to look like and a full focus on how to get there.
Well, you pretty much answered my second question, which is, how do you create the ultimate tomorrow? But have you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to fitness, it's complicated, but it's also easy. And I'll say, whatever it is you do, it doesn't have to be difficult. Apply three things. Make it personal, make it mean something for you, make it possible, make it be easy. It doesn't have to be something difficult to do. And then make it be persistent so that you actually do it, make it easy for you to do day after day. And if you apply those three things, your body will be better and your mind will be better, and then your life will be better.
I love that, brilliant summary. And I think that whole thing is, quite often we put too much pressure on ourselves to actually achieve the world in the next 2 months. Whereas basically you just said, just do the basics and get there and get better. Absolutely love it. David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate that. All the way from over on the other side of the world, which you're obviously enjoying yourself. It certainly looks like you're enjoying yourself anyway. Having a great time there. Thank you so much. Don't forget, get a hold of David's book and jump online, have a look at his socials. There's some fantastic information there that every one of us can learn from. David, have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed this.
Also, no, it's been an absolute brilliant podcast, and there's a lot of great stuff that you've mentioned there. And remember, create the life you want.